There are seasons in life when even the most powerful voices grow quiet, when the people who once lifted millions suddenly find themselves battling storms no one else can see. For more than 40 years, Pastor Rick Warren has been a mentor, a teacher, and a steady hand for believers across the world. But behind the best-selling books, the packed auditoriums, and the global influence, few ever knew the way he carried in private the losses, the heartbreak, and the illness that would eventually force him to step back from the pulpit he built from nothing. So what happened to the man who taught the world how to live with purpose, when his own strength began to fade? A childhood shaped by faith, not fame. Rick's story doesn't begin in a spotlight, it begins in San Jose, California, far from megachurches or global platforms. Born Richard Dwayne Warren on January 28, 1954, and raised in the quiet town of Ukiah, he grew up in a home where faith wasn't a performance, it was a lifestyle. His father, Jimmy Warren, was a simple Baptist pastor, part builder, part preacher who spent his life constructing churches for small communities. His mother, a gentle and thoughtful librarian, filled their home with books and curiosity. Together, they taught Rick that serving others mattered far more than being seen. As a boy, Rick watched his father work long, humble days repairing pews, patching roofs, and praying for one more church to build before I die. That prayer stayed with Rick for decades. By high school, while most teenagers were busy blending in, Rick was already leading Bible studies and starting faith groups on campus. He wasn't interested in popularity, he wanted purpose. Called to build something new. College deepened that fire. While studying at California Baptist University, Rick experienced a moment that shaped the rest of his life. After driving hundreds of miles just to hear Pastor W.A. Criswell preach, he stood in line simply hoping to shake his hand. Instead, Criswell placed his hands on Rick's head and prayed over him. "You're going to make a difference for God." Rick never forgot that. He continued his studies, earning a Master of Divinity and later a Doctor of Ministry, but what defined him wasn't his degrees. It was a burning conviction that he wasn't supposed to inherit a church, he was called to plant one. So in 1980, with nothing but faith and a U-Haul truck, Rick and his young wife Kay drove to Orange County to begin the impossible. The birth of Saddleback. No congregation. No building. No funding. Just a vision. Rick spent months knocking on thousands of doors, asking one simple question. Why don't you go to church? The answers, boring, irrelevant, unwelcoming, became the blueprint for a new kind of ministry. On Easter Sunday, April 6, 1980, in a rented high school theater, 205 people showed up for the very first Saddleback service. Rick's message, a daring faith, wasn't polished, but it was real. And people came back. Week after week, Saddleback grew. For years, they held services in gymnasiums, tents, and community centers, jokingly calling themselves the Church on Wheels. It was exhausting. It was uncertain. But Rick believed vision mattered more than comfort. By the early 90s, Saddleback had a permanent home finally, and by the mid-2000s, it had become one of the largest churches in America. A global voice is born. In 1995, Rick published The Purpose-Driven Church, reshaping how leaders around the world approached ministry. But his next book changed everything. In 2002, The Purpose-Driven Life was released, and instantly became a phenomenon. Its opening line, "It's not about you," struck a nerve worldwide. The book sold tens of millions, was translated into dozens of languages, and became the best-selling hardcover nonfiction book in U.S. history. Everyone, from Olympic champion Michael Phelps to 2 U.S. presidents, quoted it. Yet Rick didn't use his success to elevate himself. He returned years of salary, gave away most of his income, and lived simply. His credibility wasn't built on charisma, it was built on authenticity. But behind the public success, private storms were gathering. The tragedy that broke his heart. On April 5, 2013, the Warren family faced the darkest night of their lives. Their youngest son, Matthew, kind, compassionate, brilliant, had struggled with deep depression since childhood. Despite the best doctors, years of prayer, and constant love, the pain became unbearable. That night, Matthew took his life at age 27. Rick said it felt like their world shattered in an instant. Some people offered sympathy. Others, cruelly, offered blame. But Rick chose grace. God did heal Matthew, he said softly. Just not on this side of eternity. Their grief became a mission. Rick and Kay launched mental health ministries and spoke openly about depression in the church, topics many avoided. They made it their life's work to ensure no one struggled alone. But while Rick helped others heal, his own body was slowly breaking down. The illness that silenced his voice. By the late 2010s, Rick began experiencing intense, uncontrollable muscle spasms triggered by adrenaline. Doctors later diagnosed him with a rare neurological condition called spinal myoclonus, followed by an autoimmune disorder that left him in chronic pain around the clock. Then came another diagnosis, informally called Warren syndrome, a rare neurological malfunction where his body could no longer handle adrenaline. Preaching became physically dangerous. Sleeping became nearly impossible. And after more than 4 decades of leading Saddleback, Rick made the hardest decision of his life. In 2021, he stepped down as senior pastor. For the first time since he was a young man, Rick's voice fell silent. A legacy that lives on. Today, Rick Warren continues serving behind the scenes, mentoring leaders, supporting global missions, and advocating for mental health. His books continue to guide millions. Saddleback continues to grow. And his message continues to echo around the world. Faith doesn't prevent suffering. Faith gives you the strength to walk through it. Rick Warren's story is not one of perfection, it's one of perseverance, compassion, and purpose forged through pain. And it leaves us with a question only you can answer. Can your greatest hurt become your greatest calling? If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs encouragement today.